Please unmute yourself for my speakers who will be speaking.
All right. I don't know who, okay, who is 606. Athena, I don't.
Yes, Gale, are you unmuted?
I am. Should I start, Athena?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I'm Gale Brewer, Manhattan Borough President, and I certainly want to thank everyone who's part of this call where we have a discussion about the Northern Manhattan arts. And I know this particular discussion is going to be about the Coalition of Theaters of Color. And obviously there will be other questions that come up. And as a member of the City Council for many years, this particular initiative, I think at that point it was highlighted and supported by all of us, but particularly by then Council Member Inez Dickens. And it's a very, very, very important, and I know that you'll hear more about it. I want to say that here we are very close to June 8th, phase 1 of the opening. It's not the time that, unfortunately, in my opinion, some of the arts organizations are supposed to be starting and opening. That will come soon. But having participated in a discussion about Broadway recently, I know that the dollars, not just Broadway, but the dollars that are brought in by the arts in general are north of $20 million every single year. 20 billion, it's huge, 20 million, a lot of money. And the reason I mention that is that this economic interest is as important as the, and creativity is as important as the arts themselves. So I want to thank you. I know later on I'll be introducing one of your panelists, but I want to say how much I enjoy this. And I want to thank those who have been participating over the last weeks or so, led by the very, very special Boza Rivers. And certainly you'll hear more from Northern Manhattan as well as the Harlem Arts groups. I want to thank those who participated because having been to rallies and more rallies and more rallies, given the challenges of today between the economic issues, the social justice issues, criminal justice issues, and of course the health issues, we're all feeling very, very challenged and tough times. Arts keep us going. And people on this call have told me, and this is much thanks to Boza Rivers' creativity himself and imagination and leadership, that having a discussion amongst arts organizations, although it may not have an immediate end game, has more psychological support. It brings that kind of support that no other discussion does. And they've been so, so appreciative of the work of Athena Moore from our office, Boza, and everybody else on this call. So thank you very much. I look forward to the discussion and to say how unique each and every person is. And again, how much and how important this particular call is. Thank you very much.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. We are so pleased to be at this table for the 4th teleconference. Thank you to tonight's organizers, to Boza Rivers, the Manhattan Borough President's Office, and the Coalition of Theaters of Color for inviting us to this ever-growing and ever-important collaborative initiative. My name is Neria Leyva Gutierrez, and I am the Acting Director of the Northern Manhattan Arts Alliance, also known as NOMA. We are a nonprofit art service organization that strives to cultivate, support, and promote the works of an inclusive and diverse array of artists and arts organizations in Northern Manhattan. We here, like so many of you, are navigating virtual programming. In fact, tonight after this meeting, we have our 6th virtual open studio, where we commune weekly with artists, with arts organizations, and so many others eager to engage in meaningful dialogue and to think about how we move this world forward. I'd like to be able to come here tonight feeling shocked that things are again turned upside down, that what's happening around us right now, in addition to the global pandemic that we are facing and that is real, is shocking. But the truth is that although there are thousands of Americans who have taken to the streets to protest the death of George Floyd this week, the fact remains that we are once again bearing witness to this nation's long, painful history of unacceptable, unchecked, and unleashed racial violence. We must collectively demand better from one another, from our organizations, our institutions, our politicians, our teachers, our friends, our families. We must serve not only as allies, but as frontliners, the vanguard, la vanguardia, the avant-garde, roles that historically, of course, are not unfamiliar to the arts. Indeed, we are all here tonight in recognition that the arts give expression to the joys and the ills of our society. They tell the necessary stories of our most important moments. They are our multidisciplinary, living, breathing primary documents that, like the Constitution or the Bill of Rights, give insight, reveal, and record the complex nuances of our time and our place. And not only for the now, but for future generations. And I think we can all agree that we have moved beyond trying to hold on to what we had. And talking exclusively about sustainability also feels right now semi out of touch. It's not business as usual that we are after. Instead, we are compelled right now to visualize, to help shape how arts and culture will serve as the engines behind the recovery of this great city of ours. We are the shapers, we are the creators. We make things. We make things often out of nothing. And we are thrilled tonight to welcome such a rich panel of artists, arts organizations, and funders who can and must fuel this most critical of missions. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So good evening, family. My name is, for those who don't know me, my name is Sade Lithcott. I'm the CEO of the National Black Theater, and today I wear the most sacred hat of being the chair of the Coalitions of Theaters of Color. On behalf of the CTC, I would like to just thank from the bottom of our hearts the Manhattan Borough President, Gale Brewer. She has been on the front lines for us since day one, Athena Moore, Harlem Arts Alliance, and NOMA for supporting the CTC to bring this town hall to you guys tonight. This is a celebration of the work that we do. This is also a recognition of the times that we're living through. I want to first start by saying I recognize that today has been a call, a national call of mourning. It's a day of mourning, and I would also like to frame the town hall properly. This is about a call for justice. Black Lives Matter is not a moment. I argue it's not even a movement. Black Lives Matter is a value proposition. This evening's town hall is not about budgets, though budgets do tell moral stories. I would argue it's not even about theater. This is about our lives. This evening is about accountability and dismantling the structural inequities that keep our people, communities, and institutions on the margins struggling for survival. From the disproportionate impact of COVID-19 to the murder of George Floyd, the conversation this evening will be about making our communities whole. That is the point. Making our communities whole, how we walk in the direction of healing. It is our hope through open dialogue that we hold our city and electeds accountable to walk that walk, and not just talk that talk, about our lives and our community's well-being. We, as the CTC, body represent 42 cultural institutions. Together, we represent a sector that employs thousands of people of color and serves millions of New York City residents in some of the most hard-hit communities in all 5 boroughs, contributing millions of dollars to this city we love so dear. We employ thousands, and so tonight will be about solutions through our services and programs, and yes, funding is tied to many of these things, but it is not the subject. It is just the step towards justice, a step towards closing the gap of the gross disparities that are ravaging both our peoples and community. Tonight, you will hear from some of our very righteous electeds that have been fighting this fight with us. You already heard from Gale Brewer. You will hear from some of our notable allies in the funding world and from stage and film whose crafts have been shaped through some of our theaters. And you will hear from CTC Theaters about the incredible work they continue to do. Let's be clear. Cultural arts institutions are not about plays or art for art's sake. We are agents of change. Today, our missions are more vital than ever in playing a role in the recovery of our great city, as many of our organizations are more than just theaters. For decades, CTC institutions have functioned as safe havens for communities in which they operate, each year serving thousands of New Yorkers with vitally needed cultural, educational, social, economic resources and opportunities for youth, seniors, and families in local neighborhoods and in the broader residents living in the outer boroughs. We are in one business and one business alone, and that is in the well-being of community and folks that look like us. So here we are. Our ask is twofold, and we need this community to beat the drum for us. We're asking that no harm be done to the CTC initiative, City Council initiative, and that the city's commitment to implementing the findings in the Create New York invest in reflecting back the diversity of this great city by creating secure funding for the most vulnerable among us. I'm excited to have you all today, and I want to introduce someone who will set the tone for the rest of our town hall. So I'm going to introduce David Martine, who is the board chair from Amarenda, who will do a land acknowledgement, and then we will welcome you all and start our evening's program. Thank you so much. David, if you're there, unmute yourself, please.
Okay. Oh, is that good?
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is David Martine, chairperson of Amarenda, American Indian Artists Incorporated, and a member of the Nedni, Chiricahua, Apache, and Shinnecock Montauk Nations of New York. Founded in New York City in 1987, Amarenda is the only organization of its kind in the United States. Our unique organization promotes the indigenous voice in the arts and seeks to empower the individual artists as the only multi-art services organization of its kind, bringing contemporary Native arts to a broad audience, visual, performing, literary, and media of the New York movement of contemporary Native American art. New York City was traditionally the ancient territory of several Native nations, including the Lenape or Munsee Delaware Nation, the Haudenosaunee Iroquois Confederacy, who are the Mohawk, Onondaga, Seneca, Cayuga, Oneida, and Tuscarora. This is also the land of the Matinacock, Canarsie, Rockaway, Massapequa, Setauket, Unkechaug, Shinnecock, and Montauk peoples. I would like to stress that Native American tribes of this area have contemporary lives and maintain their individual communities today. Our people are not just figures of the past, but do have a vital living tradition. Today, it is our great honor and privilege to give thanks for the CTC initiative of the New York City Council and its visionary mission of having a deeply dramatic and positive impact on our Native American work in the performing arts and its importance in telling our own stories. We give sincere gratitude and appreciation to the leadership of the CTC, and we wish it many successful years to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David, for the land acknowledgement. Next up, he actually doesn't need any introduction. He is artist, activist, our king, Danny Glover. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you very much, Sade. Thank you very much for inviting me to this town hall meeting as we discuss how do we proceed from here? Where do we go from here? Dr. King, in his last book, said that where do we go from here? Chaos of community. And we have the opportunity to build throughout the chaos that we see now, the opportunity to build structures of enhancement, structures in which we validate our stories. I'm happy to see David Martine here from First Nation, and I just use the word First Nation people, but all of you here who've strived, Vosa Rivers, who I've known, and all of you who've strived to take charge of our own destiny, to tell our stories. Einstein once said that imagination is more important than knowledge, and that is that imagination is what drives us. Imagination, and certainly from the arts. Historically, in trying moments, the arts have been the relevant portion of our lives that have defined us and continue to redefine us through the basic question of, first of all, that if human beings is does it mean to be a human being? Artists, as Paul Robeson said, are the gatekeepers of truth. We've seen opportunities, we can seize this moment and bring another kind of story to us. When we cannot tell the truth about our past, we become trapped in it. And we are certainly trapped in our past right now. But that's not because of art. We need to have funding at every level of arts, whether it's at the federal level, the city level, the state level, the regional level. They'd have to have funding and put that as the center of our conversation, the center of our conversation of restoring ourselves and building affirmative communities and affirmative relationships. Those are the things that we need to do. New York is the center of art in this country. There are other places where we find art flourishing, but New York is the center of art in this country. And to some extent, it can lead not only this country, but the world in looking at how we can see ourselves, how we can go through this process of transformation. The convergence of the COVID-19 and certainly the death and murder, the lynching of George Floyd are not coincidental. Those things are connected to the everlasting struggle that we have, ongoing struggle that we have in racism, not only here, but it's the racism that happens in the rest of the world. We are defined by what we do at this particular moment, where history is right here on our side. What we do now will continue to build the struggle. And the struggle, change is ongoing. Change is not only ongoing, we have to struggle for that change. And at the bottom of that, this is the art as at the leading components in that struggle for change. Thank you once again for this invitation to be with you this evening. And the struggle continues. As we just say at moments time, a luta continua, the struggle continues.
Thank you, Danny. Diane, are you there from Amarinda?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hawaii, Dale Mikshi. My name is Diane Frere. I am founder and director of Amarinda, American Indian Artists Incorporated, and a member of the Osage and Cherokee Nations. I would like to start by offering our condolences to the family of George Floyd and to all our relatives in the African American community who are grieving and seeking justice, and also to thank our relatives in the CTC for giving us the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm here to let you know that the support from the CTC initiative of the New York City Council has been vital to the existence of contemporary Native American theater in New York, and without which there would be none on any consistent basis. All underserved communities lack basic resources that are the pillars of mainstream theater success: property, endowments, a donor base, and earned income from ticket sales and rentals. Historically, the philanthropic establishment has shown limited support for the arts in communities of color. For over a decade, the philanthropic establishment funded study after study for the demise of arts institutions serving communities of color, while not offering a lifeline of financial support to us until very recently. During this time, the New York City Council recognized the perilous state of affairs and showed great vision when they established the CTC initiative to preserve and create opportunities for our underserved artists and communities. At this time, much is being spoken about systemic racism. For all of us here today, as colonized people, we have been systematically denied our own voice. Others have spoken for us and created a false image of us to exploit for their profit. That image is the one that stays with other people and makes them feel entitled to deny our humanity because it is such a false image. Colonialism and slavery are gone, but we all remain. And in our stories, we are asking, what is our destiny and what might that be? The late Vine Deloria Jr., Hunkpapa Lakota, stated in his watershed book, Custer Died for Your Sins, the more we try to be ourselves, the more we are forced to defend what we have never been. The American public feels most comfortable with the mythical Indians. To be Indian in American society is in a very real way to be unreal and ahistorical. We believe that the power of our stories to heal us, we believe in them so much that every time I hear another false narrative, another, quote, white savior story passing as native, another attempt at cultural appropriation, I go home and sit down and start writing an honest native version of that story, and then I get up and want to get it out there into the world. Native contemporary theater started in New York City in 1971, and it is very important that it always have a vital presence in New York, which is the heart of the American theater. And with continued support from the CTC initiative, we will all be continuing to incubate leadership in writing and directing and acting and producing from all of our communities and ensuring its presence for years to come. Wakana. I am finished.
Thank you, Diane. Next up is a institution builder, an actor, a director, playwright, a champion for the CTC, Ruben Santiago Hudson.
First of all, thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be amongst you and to have a voice. This is a day and a time of chaos and a time of uncertainty, and it probably would be easy to just ball up in the corner and cry, you know, because everyone says the same thing, they're tired. And sometimes you get weary. But this is not a time to ball up and cry. It's you could, or you can choose to have a voice and speak. And I appreciate that you guys have given me an opportunity to be with the village, because there's no stronger place to be than surrounded by like-minded people who are fighting for the same things. And those things are dignity, humanity, and all the things that the great creator endowed us with. Let me tell you a little story. I came to New York in 1983, and there was a lot of uncertainty surrounding me. Uncertainty about being an artist. Can you make it? Is there a place for you? Can you be successful? Can you find a career? Can you take care of your family? But there was one thing that was certain. There were a lot of opportunities to go and express myself, to work my art, to find a theater family. Whether it was downtown, the New Federal, National Black Theater Uptown, the Negro Ensemble Company, and on, the Puerto Rican Traveling Theater. I knew that if I had nothing, I had somewhere to go and to say, I'm here, let me offer my services, let me be a part of what you're doing. When we threaten these organizations, we take not only opportunity and the ability for human beings to express themselves, to tell you where they hurt, to tell you what they need, to tell you how they feel, and in a strange and wonderful way to heal you. And so I encourage, I know there's a lot of work to do in the city. I know there's a lot of work to do in the country, in the state. This is a terribly tumultuous time. But one thing we absolutely need is the healers, the people that are running into the hospitals to help heal people, the people who are running, even the law enforcement officers who are running to protect people who are in the streets, people who are protecting each other. And we're all running into things and healing and trying to heal and protect. Ultimately, what it comes down to is when this is under control, if it ever gets to be that way, and I have faith is what I believe in, that it will get to be under control and better than that. When that is done, and those fighters are weary, and those fighters are beaten, and those fighters need to be healed, we, the artists, are the healers. We will be called to heal, to use the power that God had given us, continually gives us, this special thing. We're poets, we're healers, and what we do is sacred. When the funding is gone and the theaters are gone, the community begins to wilt. I implore everybody that's looking at a budget, and things have to be sacrificed. I'm not foolish. I'd be remiss if I thought that things weren't going to be sacrificed. I asked you to look at that budget and find a way to make sure that your theaters are intact, because as much as you possibly can, and we will find new ways to do things as well. We're gonna meet you somewhere, but we need to be empowered, supported, so we can do our healing. When the theater dies in the community, the restaurant suffers, the tailor suffers, the security force suffers, the janitorial force suffers, culture suffers. And what is New York if it's not a bastion of culture? If it's not a mosaic of beautiful, wonderful, dynamic people who all have stories that are worthy to be told. So I implore you and tell you that we need to keep our theaters intact. I wish you all safety, and please keep the village strong. Stay together.
Thank you so much.
My name is Carl Clay, and I'd like to first send my condolences to the George Floyd family. I'd like to start by saying that a siren pierces the silence of a quiet suburban evening. A storefront has been set afire, and two teens who wanted to be actors and make movies are now hanging with the wrong crowd. This is the beginning of a dream deferred. A church, a civic group want to put on a play, and they want to do it in their own neighborhood. They want to see plays, but they don't want to travel outside of that community and spend more money than they have, but now they have no other choice. 2 miles from there, a group of parents want their children to take workshops and get a deeper understanding of African culture through the theater, but they are now forced to travel outside of their community to find it. A group of seasoned actors and playwrights are frustrated. Their plays can't go up. Their scripts deal with issues affecting people of color are being rejected all over the city because the issues of people of color are not in vogue this season. Fast forward to a group of teens trying to find a place to rehearse their play. They are stopped by the police. It's 5 minutes after 8 p.m. and they are taken away by the police. Why? Because it's curfew time in New York, in the new New York City, and they are suspects just because they are out in the streets. Why is this all happening? This is not the scenario from some Twilight Zone independent movie. Instead, it's New York City in 2021, and organizations like Black Spectrum Theater and the 42 other African-American, Latino, Asian, and Native American institutions that make up CTC don't exist anymore. Why? Because the city didn't see the need to do so. I don't think there's a concerned person on this call this evening that doesn't understand that we are at the crossroads. The question is, what are we going to do? As a proud member of CTC, We are the result of 350 years of collective cultural currency we have put into this city. Our beginnings go back to the theater icons Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee, whose generous donations and their time and resources helped us forge the foundation of the historic CTC. Woody King, founder of the iconic New Federal Theater, and myself walked the halls many a day of city government and begged for years to the deaf ears of city government for support, because all of our coalition members with 25 years of existence or more were barely existing, lacking critical stabilization money, rich board members, or sustaining foundation support. While new organizations would pop up suddenly in our communities with new foundation money and city support just because they were white and privileged. But we kept asking the question, why do our African-American theaters and theaters of color who've added so much to the cultural legacy of the city with more than 25 and 30 years of existence get less support? Why out of the 40 billion plus budget that the city has, do we receive less than 1% of the arts monies in the community, in the city? Of course, we knew the answer, and those listening today know the answer too. In America and in New York City, no matter how many awards or how much service you provide to your community as a theater of color, you're relegated to the back of the economic bus despite the amount of money your community contributes to the tax base of the city. Yet in 2003, we got a glimmer of hope when the tireless efforts of council people like Inez Dickens, Charles Barron, Leroy Comrie, and others gave us the situation and provided an environment for us to be funded. And 2 years later, placed in the city budget for our contribution to the cultural landscape of New York City. And now 17 years later, 42 members of CTC for the first time in history have been partially stabilized with core funding. For the first time, organizations could begin to look at projections and cash flow. We are Black, Asian, Native American, Latino, and we are here to stay and claim our rightful place as primary arts institutions in New York City, but only if you accept the reality that we are part of the holistic solutions that will revive and preserve the city as it reopens in the weeks to come. Today, we stand at the precipice of a new day in New York City, facing two roads, one leading to the same marginalization that got us here in the first place, and the other leading to new beginnings. Will the city leave CTC behind as the easiest and lowest hanging fruit on the city's financial vines, or will we be simply sacrificed as lambs, which historically has led to our disparity and the overfunding of institutions with less sweat equity and more privilege in the city? Will we be cut, or will we be supported even more, dismantled, or built even stronger as our mission today is more vital and critical as ever? Our CTC members are more than theaters. We're our community's meeting places and sanctuaries, our cultural healing zones and mental health retreats for the stress of simply being people of color in New York City and America. Our theaters represent the birthplace of African-American culture, and many of the stars of stage and screen were nurtured in our very institutions. Study after study has shown the correlation between the arts and health, social and cultural interaction and isolation, the lack of the knowledge of one's culture, and inferiority complexes. As the founder of Black Spectrum Theater, which has served Southeast Queens community for the last 50 years, and strengthened by the CTC support, we understand that we are in a unique position to change the paradigm and all the negative correlations I just mentioned. Our institution proudly represents nearly 20,000 people who participate in our programs each year. We produce 7 main stage productions a year and employ 75 actors a season, and have developed over 200 subscribers who help support our productions, dinner theaters, and special events. As a non-union theater, we have produced and presented over 350 theater productions in the last 50 years, which consist of both classic plays from the 20th and the 21st century. playwrights like August Wilson, Charles Fuller, Rob Penny, and Lawrence Holder, Celeste Walker, Pearl Cleage, to just name a few, Lisa Thompson, Levy Lee. All of these are playwrights whose works have been presented out at our theater. We've also trained actors and have created over 25 award-winning social justice films like Urban Encounters, What to Do If You Get Stopped by the Police. While we've been reviewed in all the major papers and gotten many Ordelco awards, our greatest award has been the support and acknowledgement of our community. Our community trusts us because we tell our stories and show our images with truth, honesty, and without hesitation. We don't compromise and give the highest regard to preserving our culture and addressing our community's deepest concerns through the arts. Just to give you an example, in the last 2 months during COVID-19, Black Spectrum Theater, like many of the CTC organizations, has partnered with people around them because we're not just theaters, as it's been mentioned by our speakers earlier. We've partnered and raised monies with the 1906 organization to provide testing for COVID before the city could even bring out the testing kits throughout the city. We've used our outdoor signs to project health messages to our community. Wear a mask, stay hydrated, wash your hands, because so many of our community didn't believe the pandemic was even real. We've served seniors. They've picked up food at our location, and we produced online series on COVID, alternative health methods to deal with COVID, and other activities, spoken word, and so forth. Like all of the CTC members, we've been using Zoom and online series to continue to communicate. And we've produced 2 PSAs on COVID-19. The point is, nobody told us we had to do these things. Like all of our CTC members, we do these things because we must. It is our duty. Our hearts and spirits demand it because we know it is the only way to save and build a stronger community and a city we care so much about. And so we ask the city and the foundations alike to help us do our part to bring the city back to life, the city that we love.
Thank you, Carl. Now I want to introduce the incomparable Tony Award winning force that is Andre Deshields.
I am absolutely here. Can you hear me? Great, okay. I got 4 minutes. Here's minute number 1. This is not the time to defund the coalition of theaters of color. Now, it's a consortium of not-for-profit performing arts institutions. Now, that confuses Americans. Why? Because if you're not-for-profit, they wonder, what are you for? Well, the CTC is for the transformational power of theater, because we know that theater can change an individual's life. We know that theater can alter governments. We know that theater can be the transformation in the world that we all want to see. This is precisely the time that we need to support the Coalition of Theaters of Color. Now, I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland in the late 50s and early 60s. So I had 2 choices. I could be a knucklehead with a life expectancy of 25 years and then be brought down by a police bullet or chokehold or knee to the neck. Or I could find some way to save myself. And if but for my parents deferring their dreams, I would not be able to be here to be a witness for, to bear testimony for the Coalition of Theaters of Color. Born in Baltimore, educated in Wisconsin, but baptized in New York. When I came to New York in 1973, 2 of my earliest artistic homes was the New Federal Theater. Woody King, founder and continues to be the executive director, of that gorgeous organization, and the Amos Repertory Company, which was founded by Rosetta Lenoir. In 2019, a year ago, I was blessed to be the Triple Crown winner of the Outer Critics Circle Award, of the Drama Desk Award, and of the Tony Award. I mentioned that because the very first award I received in New York was an Odelco Award. Odelco, which is the Audience Development Committee, whose mission it is to recognize excellence in Black theater. And to my knowledge, it's the only organization worldwide that does that. That happened because of the Coalition of Theaters of Color. Today, we're dealing with the coronavirus, but that is not the only infection that we need to be concerned about. There is in the air an infection of temptation, the temptation to despair, the temptation to panic, to fear, the temptation of self-pity, complacency, and apathy. Those of us in the theater answer to those transgressions because we are the masters of language. We are the masters of emotion, the masters of intellect. And we share the same mission with the Hippocratic Oath, and that is first do no harm. And moving on from that, our mission is to heal. So we're not going to be silent. We're going to heal with impunity. Now, I may have just a minute and 30 seconds left. So I'm going to use it this way. I'm most well known for my performance in the musical theater. So I'm going to take a drink of water. And I'm going to sing us out. Okay?
All right.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmony of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Thank you. Hey, 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 CTC.
Wow, 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 wow. Thank you, Andre, so much. Thank you, thank you. Up next is Libertad from the Clemente.
Thank you, Sade. I come here on behalf of the community of theaters within the Clemente Soto Vélez Cultural Center, in which I serve as executive director. We house 4 theaters under one roof with flagship organizations such as Teatro Latea and Teatro Sea, which is the premier bilingual Latinx theater for young audiences in the nation. In these divisive times, we speak with one voice. The Clemente has been a mainstay of the downtown artistic community for nearly 30 years, serving as a cultural anchor to its Lower East Side neighborhood, as well as the Latinx community throughout the city. We are also one of a handful of models in New York State that provides affordable workspace and venues to promote and preserve communities of color, cultural contributions, and are the last surviving multi-arts and multicultural hub with a Puerto Rican and Latinx founding mission in all of Lower Manhattan. The merits of our labor in the arts and culture are amply documented in recognitions from peers in the field, but most importantly, it is also vetted by the very Latinx, immigrant, and POC communities we champion and uplift, including the Loisaida neighborhood, which is a place with one of the highest infection rates and death counts from COVID in Manhattan. Our losses so far are in the $4,000 dollar range, more than 1/3 of our annual operational budget. We are facing COVID at a systemic operational disadvantage, not of our own doing, a disadvantage that does not reflect in any way the quality of work and services to the field, but that is purely the result, as we all know, of systemic inequalities born out of structural racism, including the failure to properly fund, both by public and private funders, the indirect cost rate of our programs and the overhead that our stewardship of brick and mortar facilities for community space entail. The CTC and Immigrant Initiative are examples of the city putting its funding where their words are and supporting the cultural competent organizations that have been doing this work for decades, despite the uneven visibility that our institutions get. As an umbrella cultural center that is firmly anchored in our communities, we served as a culturally competent and affordable infrastructure for emerging artists and cultural producers to discover and develop their voices outside of major legacy institutions. We offer free and deeply subsidized arts access programs for both English and non-English speakers and sustain multiple entry points of learning year-round. Bridging the dangerous science and humanities divide, we can prevent the risk of communities of color affected by disinvestment, police brutality, and now the pandemic to be engaged mostly from a very narrow understanding of public health. We will play an important role in the reopening and recovery of the city as our arts and culture work fits within the expanded understanding of individual health and community well-being, as others have mentioned. Concretely, our theaters need support for, among other things, an infusion of digital audiovisual equipment and professional consulting in order to ensure the continuity of production for the next year and a half. Support will also ensure our ability to procure digital audiovisual infrastructure to capture, relay, and archive Latinx and heterogeneous practices in this COVID juncture. This will be the difference between silence and a creative and inspiring communion with the public. As theaters, we are mainly storytellers, and we will tell the stories of what is happening, who stood by us, who spoke empty words, who opened a hand in solidarity, and who closed a fist to strike. We will do this because it is what we do best, but also because those stories are part of who we are. I must state it even more simply than that. Austerity is not an acceptable excuse to starve us and our communities. The city cannot afford to lose the vital social infrastructure that the CTC provides. Thank you.
Thank you, Libertad. I'm sorry we weren't able to participate in the culture swap together, but I'm happy that we're here together today. So thank you so much. My mother grew up in a rural farming community in South Carolina where she had hot food and racial slurs thrown at her in the cafeteria of the school she was chosen as the first class of Black students to integrate. My grandmother was a scholar in African and African diasporic history, a thought leader and mediator for the United Nations. My grandmother raised 8 children on land she owned and cultivated in Moncks Corner, South Carolina. My great-grandmother was a Cherokee woman on that same land who taught herself and others in her community in South Carolina how to liberate themselves through the written and spoken word. My great-grandfather was the first African-American dance master, Billy Pierce, who built and owned his own dance studio in the New York City Theater District. I am executive director of the Harlem Arts Alliance, an artist and advocate for artists. This work is not a career for any of us. It's a calling and community that we all lean on and into, especially at this time. The fact that we gather now in protest of potential defunding, a broken commitment by the City of New York to arts and culture communities of color, more specifically, the theaters of color gathered here today and with us in spirit, is a testament to our commitment and investment in the greater cultural community that we have cultivated. The day when theaters, playhouses, playwrights, directors, poets, actors, sound designers, all great cultural forces in their own right, cease to invest in the broken systems that continue to fail them is one we can prevent. Liberation is not an observational sport, and our continued participation in these failed systems is not mandatory. What are your commitments to the cultures that are the lifeblood of this city's economy? Less than 2.4% of Broadway's artistic staff are Black people. Emerging and established artists struggle to pay for healthcare while working within institutions that provide minimal number of sick days. I'll end my statement with a call for the institutions and individuals on this call to reevaluate their commitments to CIGs that do not support or reinvest into our collective liberation, and to bolster your commitments to CEGs that do with undeniable and unwavering intention. We will no longer be sent to eat in the kitchen when company comes or when the resources are divvied out in the city. Come to our table with innovative solutions, resources, and an ear to listen, like Gale Brewer, Inez, LMCC, and the West Harlem Development Corporation have, or step aside. It is now my pleasure to introduce the Honorable Inez Dickens, who is a longtime supporter for the Harlem Arts Alliance and arts and culture in the city. Inez, please take the word.
Lisa, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Is Inez Dickens on and unmuted?
I do not see her on the list of folks.
Okay. I know that the Assemblywoman is also preparing to facilitate a Unity in the Community town hall online as well, which starts at 6:30, and we're right at time. So it's possible that she is needing to defer until a later time. If she comes on, we will acknowledge her. At this time, we'd like to proceed with the program. I also know we've been joined by Majority Leader, Council Member Lori Cumbo, who is also on our agenda. I just want to acknowledge her, and we will be introducing her shortly.
So I know that Council Member Adrienne Adams is on. She is a fierce force in the City Council. She is the co-chair of the Black, Latino, and Asian Caucus, a caucus that has championed the coalitions of theaters of color and why we have the funding that we have. Council Member, are you present, and can you unmute?
I sure am, and I just did. Good evening, everyone. I'm in awe, first of all, to be in your company. to be in your presence. It is an absolute honor to be with all of you tonight. Joyous, I follow you. I don't know how I got to be so blessed to follow you as one whose parents hailed from Pineville, South Carolina, next door neighbor to Moncks Corner, South Carolina, and a family who was still in St. Stephen and Somerville. So high five to a homegirl. Andre Deshields, I don't even know where to begin, sir. I bow to thee. I bow to thee. One of the first plays that I ever saw. So you wanted to meet the wizard. I can't tell you. I am in awe. Danny Glover, amazing. Ruben Santiago Hudson, absolutely amazing, as are all of you here on this call. Again, I'm so humbled to be in your presence. You know, this is such an amazing time for us. It's a painful time, but as I am a spiritual person, I believe that God has us on reset for a reason. And even though we may be enduring some tough times right now, when we come out of this, we are going to be different. And I believe we're going to be better than ever before, because we can't go back to normal, because we weren't doing that great in the normal. So my hope and my prayer is that we go back to beyond, and initiate a new normal. Now, the arts is something that is very near and dear, of course, to the city of New York. It is the pulse of New York. As been said, New York is the Mecca of the arts. My daughter graduated from the famed school, and she's a triple threat, and I'm very proud of her and everything that she has been doing in the arts as well. So all of you are so near and dear to me. We have such vibrant arts and cultural sector, and you've endured amazing challenges during this pandemic. I also need to shout out Carl Clay. I love you. Black Spectrum, you already know. The Heart of Southeast Queens. CTC, you are extremely important to healing our community, to stimulating cultural consciousness and highlighting emerging directors, playwrights, and performers of color. As a member of the budget negotiating team of the New York City Council and co-chair of the BLAC of the New York City Council, I'm here tonight just to make sure that you know that I support you during this challenging time, and will continue to fight for you, as will my wonderful colleague, our majority leader, Lori Cumbo, the gracious Lori Cumbo. We're going to continue to fight for you as we negotiate an unprecedented New York City budget. We're up against amazing challenges right now. I just got in literally from marching in the street for 2.5 hours with protesters that I have told not to stop because of what we have ahead of us as a people of color, as peoples of color. We are up against tremendous change right now. And I heard a youth say a little while ago, we're not trying to be the change anymore. We are the change. So I'm saying to all of you and all of us, CTC, we are the change. We're going to continue to fight for you. We've been through some pain with COVID-19 like we've never seen before in communities of color. As one who has been affected, not just in my district here in Southeast Queens, but also in my personal life. I lost my father 2 weeks ago, and we'll bury him tomorrow morning. I implore you to send your prayers, your good vibes, and your good thoughts in my way and in the way of my family as we continue to endure this horrible pandemic. But I'm not going to stay on because I really want to hear from all of you. Thank you, Sade. I really want to hear from all of you and everything that you have to share with us, with each other. I'm going to encourage you to keep on being the light in this beautiful city of New York. We're going to keep the lights on because you are the light. And the New York City Council will certainly continue to champion you because you are our champions. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Up next is an institution builder. She is a fighter and a champion. She is our majority leader of the City Council, Council Member Lori Cumbo.
Hello, everyone. I just wanted to also bring greetings along with my co-chair of the Black, Latino, and Asian Caucus, Adrienne Adams. We certainly send our condolences again to you and your family. I admire your strength. I don't think I would have the ability to be on a call at this time as I'm preparing also for if I were also preparing for my father's funeral. So our hearts and prayers go out to you. I just want to say that there's nobody in the council who understands the plight of cultural institutions of color at this time than myself. I've worked very hard with the Black, Latino, and Asian Caucus, as well as Councilmember Jimmy Van Bramer, but also with Speaker Corey Johnson in terms of making it known how passionate I am about the Theaters of Color initiative. When I first got elected into office, knowing about this program and knowing about the tremendous sacrifice of the council members before me, as well as our dear beloved Ruby Dee and Ozzie Davis and the work that they did to create this initiative, initially with 8 organizations that had been systemically underfunded for generations. And so it was my honor and privilege to work with my colleagues to transform that 8 to approximately 30 or so organizations, and then to move it from that to each of those organizations getting a substantial increase in the last budget cycle. And you have my word that I'm going to fight as hard as I possibly can to make sure that the Theaters of Color initiative remains, because we know during this time, if our organizations do not get funded, if initiatives like the Theaters of Color are cut substantially, that they will not be around. And decades of work, blood, sweat, and tears that individuals that are either still founders or have passed the baton to are going to find it extremely difficult to maintain during this time. So you have my word and my commitment. This initiative to me is very personal, and it's something that's very dear to me. So just hearing and being reminded of the work that has been done to get us to this point, to hear the stories of our Native American, Latino, Afro-Caribbean, Afro-Latino, African-American, African diaspora stories that we are all united around, because we are a united people stemming from the continent of Africa. I'm going to continue to fight. So I thank you all, and just know that I am here for you. I am on the front lines. I too just came back from the memorial service for George Floyd and his family. And I appreciate this call because it's important that we continue to not remain quiet or silent during this time, because people will often make people in the arts feel like there are so many other things that are so much more important than the arts, so that we should just fall back and let those more important things take center stage. But we have to continue to raise our voices. I'm sure many of you are doing so, but there's an immediacy of now and challenging our institutions. How do we transform our craft that often takes a very long time to rehearse for, to write for, to create, to put forward in the best light forward for our communities to be able to experience? How do we fast forward that into the immediacy of now, and to translate those voices of creativity into the conversation, into the movement, into the struggle, into the protest, in the immediacies and the here and now? How can we utilize the gift of theater to propel this movement forward? Which is the question that I'm sure we're all asking ourselves. And we've seen a lot of creative ways that it has been done, but the voice of our actors, of our writers, of our directors needs to be told, and needs to be told quickly. as social media and technology have made things more immediate, and we have to figure out how to connect into that. So I'll stop there. I'm going to continue to listen. My son has been watching Paw Patrol for the last hour, so I like to give him a little break every now and again and give him a hug, but I am here with you and I will remain on the call. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Majority Leader. This is Athena Moore. I'm just going to interject for 1 minute. I just want to acknowledge both you and Adrienne for being with us. We also had invited a guest from the Ford Foundation, and she has informed us that she has to leave because time is running over for her. If she is still on, I just wanted to acknowledge her and give her an opportunity. And if she has in fact left, then we will look forward to bringing her back on another call. If you are there, please unmute yourself. Okay, my colleague has said that she had to move on. So thank you so much, and please continue. Thank you for your comments, and let's resume with the program. Okay, at this time, is Danique Miller on with us? Council member Danique Miller?
He is not,
Okay.
Athena.
Okay. Sade?
Yes. At this point in the program, Athena, it actually is, did you have something that you wanted to share?
Thank you all again for being with us. Again, I'm Athena Moore, Director of the Northern Manhattan Office for the Honorable Gale Brewer.
Right. Yeah.
Please mute your phone. If someone is unmuted, please mute your phone. We just wanted to acknowledge all of the New York City elected officials that are on the call. The Honorable Gale Brewer is still on, I believe. Gale, are you there? Okay. Okay, she may have had to proceed for our next call, which is happening simultaneously. But I wanted to take this opportunity to pause to allow for any questions or answers related to any of the prior speakers so that we have an opportunity to hear from our participants. So if you would please place any questions in the chat. There is a chat function on your screens, and we will begin taking some of those questions and comments. I just want to acknowledge first in the chat that I see acknowledgement from various individuals about the work that is being done. It's been acknowledged that the support and the thanks to Councilmember Adrienne Adams and the work that she has been doing is appreciated, as well as Majority Leader Lori Cumbo. Are there other comments or questions that individuals would like to have answered at this time? Please place your question into the chat.
And Athena, if we want to wait for questions to come in, I would love to introduce our next speaker, a CTC member who is a sister to me, a warrior in the Bronx, Madaha from Mind Builders.
Thank you so much, Sade, and thank you all for joining us on this solemn evening, sacred. This is a special time in history, challenging time. It's also a time of reverence and empowerment. Mind Builders Creative Arts Center is located in the Northeast Bronx. We are in the zip code that has been ranked as the area with the highest number of COVID infections in all of New York City. Our area was also described last year as a cultural desert by the New York City Cultural Plan. Addressing an urgent need in our underserved community, it is a true honor to be a member of the Coalition of Theaters of Color for more than 10 years now. Mind Builders has been tremendously grateful and gratefully surprised by the funding level that was ultimately reached this year through your persistent years of advocacy for the CTC initiative and your continuing efforts to one day more closely approach the equity that has been so long denied to the arts and cultural institutions of our communities. Our Positive Youth Teen Theater program, called PYT, under the direction of master artist Imani Douglas, when combined with Mind Builders classes in music, dance, community folk culture research, all together still virtually serve many of our 700 youth, now remotely, each week. CTC support has made it possible to reinstitute some of the valuable hours of theater training and career prep now being accomplished by dedicated professionals that were cut back during the 2008 recession. Through this initiative funding, the level of training and the production values for the free performances that the program provides in the community have been enhanced. PYT students have been able to earn scholarships to college and to advanced professional theater academies, to receive preparation for auditions where they are paid to perform in historic roles on stage, often by playwrights of color, and also for tech and support jobs backstage. Some of these students have been homeless, underfed, or struggling with dangerous challenges in their homes, personal relationships, or to their mental health that Mind Builders has now been able to support with on-site counseling or referrals as needed. As you've heard, CTC drama programs and theaters citywide are stabilizing anchors in our communities, sources of education, relief, empowerment, life-saving encouragement, and economic engines that also promote the constructive development of young people's talents and time. As of just last week, Mind Builders had received 140 applications for the 20 spaces that we had available for teams to participate in our remote folk culture program this summer. What happens to the other 120 teams that we are not able to serve? Not enough funding to serve. The need is great and we must not go backwards. This week, I was thinking of a free production that Woody King and New Federal Theater brought up to our community in the Bronx a few years back. I needed to hear from Congressman Reverend Dr. Adam Clayton Powell Jr.'s speech in that play about the miracles we can create with whatever we have. What do you have? Determination to advocate, funds, time to help, perhaps, Negro Ensemble Company or National Black Theater or other coalition of theaters of color members, maybe by volunteering. They're struggling to continue doing so much quality work as they have for years or decades now with very little help. And there are 42 organizations. What's in your hand, Powell asked. Maybe a vote in the council, or in November. Carver only had peanuts to change science and agriculture 100 ways, they said in the play. Daniel's little slingshot against a Goliath. A hand with a key and a string harnessing electricity. You've been here before, though. Your determined advocacy has worked miracles. Let's get to work, Powell would say. Let's get to work. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madaha. I'm going to interject for 1 second. We have Councilmember Adrienne Adams has just informed us that she does have to depart from the call. I'm not sure was a question for her, still on, and them could take the question. Very briefly, is related to what efforts are being made to help not just the arts organizations struggling due to the COVID-19 pandemic, but all trying to work until theaters reopen most likely in 2021.
All right. Can you help me with the chat box? I just want to be sure that Pan Asian has a voice.
Okay, yes, but at this time, if you could mute yourself for just a minute. We're trying to see if we can get the council members, if they're still on, to respond to the question. Adrienne, are you still there? I see her name is still here, but I'm not sure if she is able to unmute herself. Councilmember Adrienne, if you're still there, will you unmute yourself? Okay, and Majority Leader Combo, are you still there?
I'm still there. Can you repeat the question for me? I apologize.
No problem. The question is, what efforts are being made to help not just the arts organizations struggling due to the COVID-19 epidemic, but also the thousands of arts workers who will not be able to return to work until theaters reopen, most likely in 2021?
I mean, right now on the federal level, I know that artists and independent workers or freelancers, or what they call it, individuals in the gig economy, can apply for unemployment, which has traditionally not been what could happen previously, but it's what could happen now. I understand that the wait time for many people that we've spoken to has been far beyond the comfort level of people being able to live within the gaps in that period of time. I would say that right now, which is the challenge, is that we're in such a place of flux as far as we're waiting to understand what kind of reimbursements are going to be coming from the federal government. We have long conversations within the city council about what substantial cuts, you know, the deficits that we have to make up are incredible. So we haven't even started the process of making any cuts on the city council side, but we understand that there's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $10 billion in cuts that are going to have to be made. And those cuts are going to come every, you know, we're going to try to make up the gap from our reserves, our rainy day fund, potentially some reimbursements from the federal government, some furloughs, potentially some layoffs, and other measures that we're looking to make cost savings in each of the different agencies. There's a big push right now for there to be a major cut to the NYPD and others, with hoping that funding, you know, like we've seen in California, cuts from the NYPD are then being redirected into communities of color. You know, potentially there are opportunities for those types of cuts to make up deficits in other places. But at this time, it's really I wouldn't say it's way too soon. In terms of the fact of the matter is these decisions will be made within the next 3 weeks, because we have to have a balanced budget before June 30th. So these conversations are right in the right timing, but at the same time, they haven't been approached as of yet. So what's going to happen is these types of decisions are going to be made very quickly. And again, I want to say that, you know, you're very fortunate that there are members like Adrienne Adams, Danique Miller, Jimmy Van Bramer, myself, and of course our speaker, who are going to fight tooth and nail to make sure that programming dollars like theaters of color are not the hardest hit from what is going to be reductions. Will there be a reduction to theaters of color? More than likely, but we're going to have to see if we can stop it from the hemorrhaging from being too deep.
Thank you so much, Majority Leader. We appreciate your candid updates and giving us information about the climate at City Council. We do have additional questions, but we want to hear from one additional speaker, the Pan Asian community voice. Would you please unmute yourself so that we can hear from you? Thank you.
Thank you, Athena. Thank you, Gale, Sade, and hello to my colleagues in arms. This is Tisa Chang. Pan-Asian Repertory Theater, now in our 43rd milestone season, salutes our city leaders, city and arts advocates in city, state, federal agencies and foundations who have helped to support our sustained, distinct artistry to tell stories that reflect social justice and equity in the diverse Pan-Asian worlds. New York is a rainbow community of conscience and proactivism, and our whose mission is to educate, engage, and inspire with artistic excellence. Last year, Pan-Asian premiered The Brothers Paranormal by Prince Gomovilas to focus on Thai-American and African-American solidarity and family spiritual beliefs. Pan-Asian shone a light on Pakistani women unjustly imprisoned during the military regime in the play Acquittal by Sadeem Nahin in the 80s, which spurred the Pakistan women's movement. Our re-envisioned epic with music, Cambodia Agonistes by Ernest Abuba, will return in winter 2020 to honor Cambodian people's resilience and recovery after genocide through the lens of a classical dancer haunted by memories of the killing fields. Our pioneer CTC colleagues for 5 decades represent a collective microcosm of shared historic celebrations, watersheds, outrage, tears, and triumph. And yes, hopefully triumph, which is reflected today in our tumultuous time. Support has never been so critical to continue the artistic process of healing and trusting. Thank you to our governor, mayor, all elected officials for being at the forefront on behalf of all New Yorkers every day. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sade?
Athena, do we have any other questions? Because we're rounding out towards the end and I just have one more introduction before we bring
Yeah. Thank you so much. We have a few questions here. Electra Watson is on the chat and has been interested in collaboration and communications. Electra had her hand raised. Can you unmute Electra, Louisa?
Yes, thank you very much. Hi, I appreciate the moment, and this is a wonderful opportunity. I'm the director of the International Child Program Arts Nonprofit. We're in the Obira Dempsey Center on West 127th Street. We do arts programming in after-school programs, in-school programs, juvenile detention centers. Also, we have a senior center program. My question is because we, of course, like many others, were locked out of our building, like other arts nonprofits in the building, because of the pandemic, which is normal. Unfortunately, we've been harassed about continuing to make payments while we are locked out. It's a very complicated situation. We wondered if there was anyone that could give advice. We thought we would have gotten some kind of support because it's a city-run building. We want to continue to work for the community and youth and so forth, and it's just becoming very difficult at this time. I wonder if anyone could give any insight or someone you could go to speak to about this trying situation.
So I know that Madam Borough President is on the call, but also in two places at this time. But I, as her director of her Northern Manhattan office, which is on 125th Street, is very familiar with Oberia Dempsey and would be happy to help you in your follow-up with the city on this issue. I will put my information in the chat in case you do not have it. If there's any other person who would like to respond to this, feel free. But at this point, as the director of her constituent services, I'd be happy to support and assist you in this matter.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Also, we have a question that's in the chat, and it's about, it's from Michael Palmer. What is the difference budget-wise between a line item, which is how CTC is funded, as opposed to an initiative like CCNSF, CII, CASA, or SUCASA? Is the council member still on the line?
Yes, I'm still here.
So the question was the difference budget-wise,
I
if
heard
you are able to answer. Okay, thank you.
So an initiative is something that is created by a council member. So I'll give you an example. Theaters of Color is an initiative created by a council member. I created an initiative in the city council. Art is a catalyst for change. Some of you may receive that funding. So what happens is, with an initiative, a council member creates the initiative. It's then approved by the speaker of the city council. And then what happens is the initiative gets funded by the city council members by borough. So programs like CASA, SUCASA, Theaters of Color, there's a certain amount of money, and because we've been in up years, that's allocated to the initiatives. And then you go into your different borough delegations, you all vote and say which initiatives, let's say, are the top priorities for you. So like, for example, Jimmy Van Bramer will say, I'm going in the Queens room, and I'll say, okay, I'm going in the Brooklyn room. So he'll say, like, make sure you get as many members to vote for Theaters of Color as you can in Brooklyn, and I'll do the same in Queens. And because we have the two biggest borough delegations, if I get people to vote for Theaters of Color and he gets people to vote for Theaters of Color, but then it's a trade-off, because you may, in order to get the most votes, I may have to give up some votes to, let's say, the Holocaust Initiative, or the Autism Initiative, or the Asian Federation Initiative, or all these different groups of people are vying back and forth to support. It's kind of like the stock exchange in a way, where everybody's got their own thing, and you've got to get people to vote for your thing. Once it's voted upon, you come back from your different delegations and they determine which boroughs voted for what. And let's say for Theaters of Color, we were able to get a lot of members to vote for it. So when we have surplus money, then we're able to take that surplus money and add it on to the initiative. So in this year, there's not going to be a surplus. So at the very least, you're going to just be hoping to hold on to what you had, or if not holding on to what you had, then making sure that it doesn't get dramatically cut. Now, things like, let's say, line items or things that are in the budget, those aren't decided in the same format as a delegation. So you could have different things in the budget that aren't decided in the same way. So there are some things that'll be in the budget that an individual member decides that they're going to support, or that the speaker of the city council is going to support. So you have a speakers list, where many of you have gotten funding in and outside of the delegations. You have the BLAC caucus where there's money to be received. There's borough delegations where money can be received. And then there's also individual line items that council members individually have the power to make a decision over. So each council member gets approximately $500,000 to give out what's known as member items. So in Brooklyn, I may decide that I'm going to give a member item to the Brooklyn Arts Council. So that would be something that I'm able to do individually. But we also get approximately $5 million in capital to distribute. Now, depending on your ranking and where you are in the city council, you can get additional money depending upon your ranking and relationship with the speaker.
Thank you so much.
That was a long way of answering the question, but it is
No,
a bit of a convoluted process, but that's kind of how it goes.
It's very helpful, and although we know that it required a little bit more time, I think this body doesn't always understand those nuances, so it's very important. The borough president has rejoined us, and I know we were supposed to have the Ford Foundation joining with us, so I asked her if she wanted to say anything further. Certainly, Gale, if you'd like to speak very briefly before I ask the next question, or I can ask the question, whichever.
Go ahead.
Athena, just quickly, I wanted to just dovetail on the very thorough answer that Councilmember Cumbo gave. The question was, the assumption was that CTC was a line item in the executive budget because that's where CTC's funding initially started. It got taken out of the executive budget and turned into an initiative, which the funding grew larger as an initiative, but then became more insecure as the council member was able to explain the process by which an initiative gets funded and voted on. So and correct me if I'm wrong, a part of the executive budget, which the CIG, cultural institution groups are in, is a whole other process that is a much more secure line item in the budget and isn't affected in the same way that council initiative funding is.
Yes, I mean, I can 100% correct. 100% correct. The CIGs for the issue of water, power, and some operations, 100% line item, never to be touched. The only issue is to try to get on that list, but you can only get on that list if you're in a city-owned building on city-owned land, basically, like the Thelma Golden and the museum in Harlem. So I do think that down the line, yes, the theaters of color should end up being a line item budget. That would make you much more secure. So that's something to advocate for. I would say for this year, this is a perfect conversation to have because it is possible to keep the money you have, and you heard some discussion of that, but we should keep pressuring the speaker and everybody else. I think, I have to be honest with you, I don't know, between SYEP and theaters of color, I think you have a good chance. That's just my own observation in the crystal ball after 30 years. I just want to also just thank the community boards. I forgot to do that earlier. They have arts with 9, 10, 11, and 12. They have amazing arts subcommittee, and they have been sponsoring similar discussions. And I think, for instance, getting the community boards through their committees, if we don't have enough time, to support resolutions in support of the theaters would be an excellent idea, because every aspect of pressure is needed, because those initiatives, having been the chair of the Manhattan delegation for many years, come and go. So that's what I would suggest, and I will listen to everything else. I'm sorry, I was on with Peggy Shepard and her wonderful organization, WEAC, which you know very, very well. Thank you very much, Athena.
Thank you, Madam Borough President. The other question I just want to briefly put to the body is a question about, one, how do people make donations to CTC? 2, the number of theaters in the TFC, and what is the average drop in revenues or income? If Sade or any of the members could answer those questions.
I can answer the first one. I wasn't quite sure what the second one was. But so CTC is a coalition of 42 diverse nonprofit theater organizations. We're not our own 501c3. Though as a coalition, foundations have supported in our advocacy work, funding us in our advocacy work. So my suggestion, if you want to make a donation, which is very generous, is to choose one of the theaters or, donate to all of us if you want to, but individually.
Thank you so much, Sade. And I think if others have particular questions about the background and the more specifics related to CTC, we'd be happy to facilitate getting that information. I know Daria Hardiman is on from the Community Board 9 Arts and Culture Committee. Daria, if you're still there and you have a question, please unmute yourself.
While we're waiting for her, I just really want to say while we have the majority leader on, and I want to say it publicly, Lori Cumbo has been one of the hugest champions. This small line item turned into a multi-million-dollar initiative through hard sweat and tears, led in part by Lori Cumbo, and she has pulled me over to the side every time we see each other, and she says, I'm going to fight for you. So I just want to acknowledge you publicly. When you first became a council member, you found ways to support theaters even outside of your borough that your borough members visited, because you just have always known the power of transformation in our organizations, and we don't get to publicly thank you enough for your tireless work. So I just wanted to say that while we're waiting for the next person to unmute.
Thank you. And we have Ty Jones on. Ty, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Yes, Ty.
Thank you.
We appreciate the work that you do and know that you've been a phenomenal part of the theater community. Is there a question that you had for the group or for the council member?
I don't have a question. This has been very informative. And I'm ready to be there like a sheepdog. So if we have anybody that's threatening, our money, we need to just go down to the city hall's door and, get a little visceral, make some statements, put our bodies out there, and I'm ready to do that.
Thank you so much. I have one final question. I see Guadalise Del Carmen is raising her hand. Can you unmute?
Hi, can you see me okay or hear me okay?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Guadalise Del Carmen. I'm the co-artistic director of the Latinx Playwright Circle. And we're a newer organization, and I just found out about this. I'm really excited to have been able to join on and hear this wonderful conversation. My question revolves around if there are any initiatives that are available for starting organizations. We're still new. And our focus is on nurturing and developing Latinx playwrights that are primarily based in New York City. We're finding that, excuse me, many times there's a door that's held in many of the institutions, like the bigger institutions like the Lark and New Dramatists, and they have a finite number of folks that they allow into their spaces yearly. So we felt that there was very much a need to nurture and develop the writers in our community. So I was just wondering if there are any initiatives within the CTC that are specifically targeted for new organizations.
Okay. Does anyone want to take that and respond to Guadalise of my panelists?
I would say that.
Yes, go ahead, please.
From being the founder of the Moncada Museum and starting that about 20 years ago, I would say that I started with our local arts councils, and that was the way I was able to get my foot in the door, as well as a lot of foundations that were giving seed money at the time for new not-for-profits. I think what's also helpful is to, depending on how long you've been in existence and where your operating budget is at, if it's somewhat at a substantial place, I would still apply to the Department of Cultural Affairs and start getting yourself into the zone of applying for funding and get into the zone of applying for city council funding. The deadline for that is in February, so it's been missed for this fiscal year, but it's good to get into the place of doing the work and understanding what that process is. I would say that, you know, in this fiscal year and coming up, if you have applied, this is going to be a really tough year, just honestly speaking, for you to get money for the first time. I think everybody's in a place where council members are trying to protect the groups that they've typically always funded. And I'm confident that we're not going to get any new money. So I would say I would start with the arts councils. I would also apply to, the thing about applying for council funding is that you have to be in it to win it. So sometimes there will be opportunities for money after the fact to become available. But if you never applied to the council, you won't get that funding. So I definitely would recommend starting with your art councils, continuously still applying to the Department of Cultural Affairs and others, as well as looking for organizations and foundations that are providing seed money to see how you can just get started.
Great, thank you.
I want to just add that
yes,
the borough
Gail.
presidents, just so you know, the borough presidents, I don't know what borough you're in, but if you're in Manhattan, we have a little bit of expense money, which is what you need starting in July and August. Other boroughs, the same thing. And we're not so set. I know what it's like to be a council member. You can't mess with the groups that you've been funding, but I'm not so set. So if you're in Manhattan, let us know. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, who is that, please?
Carl Clay, Black Spectrum Theater.
Yes, go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, the question is, has the council ever considered the idea that, you know, there's an expense budget for the city and then there's the capital budget? Has there been any discussion about, in this particularly difficult fiscal year, moving some of the capital monies over into the expense side for just this fiscal year in order to relieve the city in some way? That's just a question.
I would defer in some ways to the borough president in this way, because I'm sure she'll know the more technical answer. I've just been, because that question has come up a number of times, we've just been told that it can't be done. It's something that relates to the city charter, something that relates to the bond market as to why we can't do it. But I'm sure Gale knows more specifically the appropriate language for that. Because we've seen a lot of things that we haven't seen before, like things that I had fought to get line itemed into the budget have already been slashed in this budget. And those were things that I thought were super protected. So I'm seeing a lot of things that I haven't seen before. So Gale, you may know better, what is the technical reason why they say capital can't be transitioned into expense?
Well, Laura, you're 100% correct. The capital money is all bonded. So when we get, you know, $1 million to fix up the park, it's not city money, actually. We're borrowing it and we have to pay it back. So that's why there's actually a cap on how much we can borrow. I know the mayor wants to go above that, but right now there's a cap. So it's almost like, you know, apples and pears. You cannot move capital money because it's not actually real money. You have to borrow it, pay it back. So if you borrow too much, of course, then the interest is high and then you have to pay back even more. So the answer to this question, we've all talked about it, but it's not able to be moved over. That's the answer to the question, legally or even in terms of the charter. You're absolutely correct.
Okay.
Thank you so much. I think we have all of the questions from the chat at this time. I do know that there were general comments made and statements made about wanting to hear about other arts, parts of the arts sector. If any last person wants to reply, it's about how do we meet the needs of gig workers, individuals, as well as those who are not just in theater, but other arts disciplines like visual arts and dance. We've held 3 prior Zoom calls which have addressed some of those disciplines, but on this call, if there's anyone who wants to address that and how we work together moving forward, that will be the last opportunity to respond, and we'll turn it back to Sade. Any of the panelists would like to respond? Okay, if there's any further question or comment, then we will just defer to our contact information for follow-up. And I'd like to turn it back to Sade Lithcott and thank all of our prior speakers. Oh, I'm sorry, I see Daria Hardeman. Last question at this time from Community Board 9, who was acknowledged earlier. Could we unmute Daria Hardeman, please?
Hi. I'm sorry I got kicked off when you said my name the last time. I just wanted to add, you were talking about the gig worker. As you know, Community Board, I'm from Community Board 9 Arts and Culture Committee. I'm the co-chair. And we have also been having calls piggybacking off of the Borough President and Athena's calls. One of the things we're trying to do is bring together individual artists. So to sort of sound the alarm, just to make sure that we are not forgotten in the legislation. So I left my information in the chat, and my name is Daria, D-A-R-I-A. My email is daria@yahoo.com. We have had our last meeting for the year, but because of what's going on, we of course will still be sort of working over the summer. So please feel free to reach out. And Liz Ritter, Community Board 12, I'm trying to reach you. So please, if you could reach out. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Athena, should I? Okay.
Yes, please proceed. Thank you, Sade, and thank you, Daria.
Thank you for all of the questions and the answers. Our last speaker tonight, before we hand it over to Voza to close us out, is a founding member and one of the original voices of the Coalitions of Theaters of Color. He is a staple. He is the foundation of Black theater in the country, I would argue. I think I introduced Danny Glover as the king, but our king is Woody King Jr. from New Federal Theater. Woody, are you there to unmute?
Yes. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to be brief. Silence is what we had been before CTC. And CTC, with the help of Ozzie Davis and Ruby Dee and Carl Clay and Voza Rivers and Charles Barron and Barbara Ann Tier, changed that. And we walked the halls of 250 Broadway. And Charles Barron listened to us. And we got initial funding. And now we're at 42 theaters across the board. Indian, American Indian, Asian, and we are strong. We are very strong now. So we have to stay strong. We must stay strong. We must speak out constantly. And this CTC Town Hall is a first step in speaking out. You saw the work of Ruben Santiago Hudson. You saw the work of Andre Deshields and Danny Glover, who is a part of what we are about. And we are about entry-level, major American artists who we see as someone coming into this system and going on to help stabilize the economy of New York. Hadestown, that was doing $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a week. And Andre Deshields can attest to that. It was sold out all the time. These shows bring in an unbelievable amount of money into the economy. And they must have artists of unquestionable caliber in order to do that. And they must have a starting place. David Allen Greer was in A Soldier's Play. You know, all these people who are wonderful, who are excellent, and they come out of these theaters. And I just want to say that, and thank you all. Voza, thank you. Carl, thank you. You know, it's like Sade, wow. Barbara Antia, Sade and Loose Blossoms, with Chadwick Boseman, and Chadwick Boseman he did Black Panther, and that was their first thing. And Sade is there teaching them how to walk across the stage. I mean, it's amazing, you know, where they come from, how they work, and we in the Black theater really try desperately to relate African American themes to Black people, artists who wants to do it. And no one does that better than Ruben Santiago Hudson and Danny Glover and Andre Deshields. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Woody. Thank you so much. Voza, it's all yours. You're muted. Voza, you're still muted. Voza,
I'm unmuted now? Good.
Yes.
I just wanted to say thank you to the more than 300 callers who participated in listening to our August body of what I call theater practitioners. We have been at this for a long time, and our goal is always to stay the course, and that's what's happening. I just want to again say thank you to all of the 42 members of the Coalition of Theaters of Color, the foundation members of Theaters of Color, all of the participants today. Special thanks to Sade, a special thanks to Joyous from the Harlem Arts Alliance, and also NOMA, the community boards 9, 10, 11, and 12. You all help make us stronger. We are indebted to your consistent stick-to-itiveness to make sure that we can do what we're doing. Let me also end by saying that I don't know if we'll get another chance to say thank you, but there's also been another angel, and we call angels those people who look at theater and go beyond the giving, beyond just making contributions and acknowledging and validating the work that we do. And she happens to be the assistant commissioner that will be retiring shortly. And we just wanted to say, on behalf of the Coalition of Theaters of Color, for all of you who are here now, thank you to Kathy Hughes for supporting us through this long journey. And I want to get a clap, say thank you. Thank all of you. Get home safely, and we love you.
Have a great, great night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. It was a wonderful, brilliant presentation.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank
Good night,
you.
all.
I want to salute,
Wow, take care.
and want to salute all my Asian American colleagues too.
Amen.
Bye.
Thank you for bringing the Negro National Anthem into this space, Andre. We needed it more than
Andre, yes, thank you.
It was wonderful.
Thank you, Spectrum. All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Ashe.
Good night.
Good night.
Pox. Right?